Larry Elder can write just a book on what the Republican Party did to him. It's painful. It's actually painful. I want to review this. I want then we'll continue. I want people to understand why you were not on the debate stage when you met all the criteria. Once again, you needed 40,000 individual contributions.
Right.
You had that.
Check.
You needed to be a certain percentage in polling.
1% or above in 3 separate polls.
Right, which you met.
Check.
Let me just analyze for a moment. Where did they get the idea that Rasmussen is connected to Donald Trump?
I have no idea. And as I said, Rasmussen put out a tweet and said, we are not affiliated with Donald Trump. There's no reason why Larry Elder can't use us. And Rasmussen was one of the most accurate polls in 2016, predicting that Donald Trump was going to win the election. And if you look on the Twitter file of the RNC, they refer to the Rasmussen poll all the time. It's one of the most respected polls in conservative circles. So all of a sudden, it's affiliated with Trump. I don't know why. I did not get a good answer. And then, Dennis, I didn't put this, I've not mentioned this part. The RNC sent a letter. There are around 180 some odd members of the RNC. They sent a letter to them saying that actually Elder did not meet 1% in any of the polls. So we wrote a letter to all 180 some people at the RNC attaching a link to all the polls where we had 1% or better. Why they did that is beyond me. I think so many people in the RNC wanted me up there, were angry at Ronna McDaniel. She gave another excuse for why I wasn't there. So she sent out that letter.
It sounds, forgive me, it's a very tough word to use. It sounds like she lied.
She flat out lied in that letter, no question about it. And Dennis, your question is why? I think there are 2 reasons. The first reason is they, in my opinion, wrongly believe that in 2016 there were, quote, too many Republican candidates. As you know, Donald Trump picked off 16 or 17 people and emerged as the front runner. And I think they wanted fewer people. And so if they could figure out a way to eliminate one person with a straight face, fair enough. But I think more importantly, Dennis, and this is just my own subjective point of view, I think Larry Elder has long given the Republican Party and the RNC heartburn because of how in your face I am on so many issues, particularly the way the Democrats use race to motivate black people to vote for them. I think that the RNC has been wimps in fighting that. For example, Joe Biden goes to Howard University a few months ago, commencement exercise, and tells these students that the number one threat to the homeland is white supremacy. And we didn't say anything. And the Anti-Defamation League, I know we have issues with the ADL, but they keep track of how many people are killed every year by political extremists. And last year, there were around 20 or 25 out of over 20,000 homicides. And I've said publicly...
What, sorry, there were 20 or 25 what?
25 people killed by political extremists.
Okay. You're answering the great threat of white supremacy.
White supremacy is the biggest threat to the homeland.
So I want to memorize this. 20 to 25 out of how many homicides?
Out of over 20,000 homicide victims last year.
So
it's a tiny fraction
of 1/10%.
And by the way, not all of these political extremists were white.
Right.
So you get down to the white ones, and it's just even smaller. So it's ridiculous to tell these black students graduating from Howard this is the number one threat to the homeland. But Biden does that. Why? Because he wants black people to be angry about social justice.
Well, he said that the Georgia laws were Jim Crow 2.0. I just read it on the air.
He said it was Jim Eagle.
Sorry?
Jim Eagle. He says worse than Jim Crow, it's Jim Eagle.
He said that?
Yeah, that's what he said.
That is so witty.
Yeah, well, the writers had a strike. So now let me follow up the thing he said about Howard. And if you want to play that game, Dennis, most homicide is same race homicide. Most whites who are killed by other whites. Most blacks who are killed by other blacks. However, every year there are roughly 750 black-white homicides out of the total. So still a small percentage, but out of the total 750 black-white homicides. 500 whites are killed by blacks, even though blacks are just 13% of the population. 250 blacks are killed by whites, even though whites are 60% of the population. Now that's homicide. Let's talk about non-homicide violent crime between blacks and whites. Every year, roughly 600,000 such instances. And by non-homicide violent, I'm talking about attempted murder, I'm talking about rape, I'm talking about assault with an aggravated weapon. Yes. 85 to 90%, it is a white. 85 to 90%, it is a black perp white victim. 85 to 90% black perp, white victim, only 10 to 15% the other way around. Now, if Donald Trump went to a university and said the number one threat to the homeland is black supremacy, citing these stats, you and I would both denounce him as a race-hustling demagogue, because it's not black people doing it, it's individuals doing it, which is why we hold them individually responsible. Similarly, the small number of whites who kill blacks are individual whites doing it, not white people doing it. So we would denounce whoever said that as a race-hustling demagogue, but Biden says it and gets away with it. Now, shortly after he says this, Dennis, I'm sure you reported on this. In Jacksonville, a racist white man murdered 3 black people and did it because they were black. Biden, of course, made a comment about it. Not only did he make a comment about it, he said silence and hatred like this makes you complicit. 2 months earlier, Tulsa, Oklahoma, black guy gets a gun, walks up to a white man he doesn't know, shoots him in the back of the head, kills him, goes to another area of Tulsa, another white guy, walks up to him, shoots him in the back of the head, kills him, admits he did it because they were white. Biden didn't say jack because it didn't fit the narrative, even though it's much more likely for that to happen, twice as likely for that to happen as the other way around. And when Armin Arbery, the Georgia guy who was jogging, got killed, LeBron James goes to Twitter. He's got, I don't know how many followers, almost check it out, Alan. See what he has, probably 50, 60 million followers on all the social media platforms. And he said, we, meaning black people, are afraid to leave our homes for fear of white people.
God. What a lie.
When, in fact, the number one cause of preventable death for a 19-year-old black youth and under is homicide, almost always at the hands of another 19-year-old black youth and under. The number one cause of preventable death for a white male 19 and under is accidents, like car accidents or drownings or drug overdoses. I told this to Donald Trump when we were in Mar-a-Lago, Dennis, 2 weeks ago, when I told him I was going to support him. I said, please talk about the epidemic of fatherlessness, which is particularly acute in the black community. And to his credit, he put out a tweet and did so. And I told him that a black male aged 10 to 43 is 13 times more likely to be murdered than a white male in the same demo.